there. Welcome to just a short little sequence for hip mobility. This practice will be done mostly on your back, and the intention is to mobilize all of the tissues around the hip joints to free up energy flow from the hips, the pelvis, to be received throughout the rest of the body. Come to lie down on your back. Get your triple S, so that means your skull, your shoulder blades, your sacrum level on the ground. Take the feet about as wide as the mat, and then you're just going to do an assessment here. Let the knees go to the left and up and over to the right, and bring your mind power into your hips. Just get a sense of how they feel. Maybe it's kind of sticky. You're internally and externally rotating the hips. Maybe one hip feels like it can move more easily, has more range. The low belly stays tight. Good. And then just come back to center. Feet stay grounded. And then bring the left hip into flexion. So you're lifting the knee above the hip, and you're just going to pulse here a little bit. So your left finger's going to the hip crease, so you can feel like there's a little bit of a pinch right there. Keep the sacrum pushing onto the ground. The pelvis is staying level. All other body parts are staying stable, and you're just moving at the hip, trying to hydrate and get in your mind this action of hip flexion. You can even, when the knee comes towards you, with your fingers, push the femur bone towards your glutes a little bit more, making more space by taking the head of the thigh bone back into the socket. And then pause with the knee above the hip. Externally rotate the hip, internally rotate, and just keep doing that. Notice internal rotation will naturally have less movement, less range, and that's fine. Don't push it. Keep the pelvis steady, the abdominals engaged, just working the hip in this internal and external rotation. Good, and then pause and center. Right hand goes on the right thigh, and then lift up. So push your hand into your thigh, lift the pelvis, doesn't have to go very high, and then just internally rotate this left thigh, and then back to neutral. Internally rotate, back to neutral. Keep going. As you do that, you should feel that right glute really fire, because it's stabilizing the right hip. You're mobilizing the left hip in this internal rotation. Keep tightening the low belly. 2 more. Good. Come back to neutral. Lower the pelvis down. You're going to keep this left knee bent, but roll onto your left side. Reach that left arm alongside your ear and rest your head on that arm. The right hand is going to hold the left knee down. And you'll bend that right knee in line with the hip, and then take it back. So extending at the hip and then back to flexion. So hand on knee helps to keep your core engaged. So connect to that. And as you're gliding this right leg, right hip into extension and flexion, imagine that you're just doing it over like a table. So the knee isn't dropping or lifting up too much, the best you can. Keep it in line with the hip. Belly stays pulled back. The glute is what extends the hip. Feel that opening across the front as you engage the back of the hip. Couple more. Everything that's on the floor pushes into it a little bit to keep your center active. And then just hold it in extension. Just pause there for a moment. Keep your right hand pushing that left knee down. Hug your belly back. Just really firing that right buttocks. Good. And then bring the knee forward to line up. Bring the feet together. And then you're just going to create these little clamshells. So lifting and lowering that right knee. Hugging the belly back. And you can even take your hand and just feel the muscles that are being immobilized and activated, the hip. Couple more of these. Good, and then you'll land the knee in line with the hip. Straighten that leg out. Turn the toes down, tap them down. So the leg is straight and you're internally rotating. If it feels okay with the belly hugging back, you can start to pulse toe taps. Really press that bottom leg down. Really working this outer hip, deep glute, deep rotators. 3, 2, 1. Now take this right leg all the way up, roll onto your back. Left hand to the left knee. So you're going to Keep this left knee actively pressing down as the right leg opens, just getting into this inner hip compartment. Take your right hand to support that outer right leg. Couple of breaths here. So there's activity, right? You're not just hanging. The heels are pressing. The low belly's pulling back. You're going to roll back onto your left side. Bend the right knee and place the foot outside or right above that left thigh. And then come onto your forearms. So you're facing back. This right knee is up. Belly pulls back, and you can start to roll forward and back, even to try to create like a cat back. And just feel this mobilization of the lower back, which of course those muscles connect to the hip. Pushing into this right foot, get that feedback up into the hip as you're moving like this. And then to come out of this, you're just going to thread that left arm back underneath you, roll onto your back into a figure four. Keep the right ankle over your left knee and just get that left foot on the ground. Without using your hands, pull the left knee in towards you, move the right knee away, and then rock a little side to side. So you're not using your hands, you're actually using the strength and the range that you have right now. Flexion of the hips. This right hip is also externally rotated. Your sacrum's pressing down and the lower back is light. That's going to really keep you into the hips and not moving into your lower back. Bring that left foot back to the floor, right foot to the floor. Take soles of the feet together, knees wide. Lengthen your tailbone. And then take your hands to the top of the thighs. So not inner thighs and pushing down. Top of the thighs and then push away. So a little traction out. You can rock from side to side here if that feels good. Think of creating more space between your pelvis and your ribs. And kind of tractioning out and decompressing the hip joint itself as you're externally rotated. Bring the knees together and just hug them in towards the chest, a little squeeze. And then we'll do that whole thing on the second side. I'm going to flip around so that I will still be able to face you when I turn to the side. So now right hip, bring it into flexion. And then squeeze it in and pulse it, right, back and forth. Use your fingers, stuff them into the hip crease so you can actually push the femur bone towards your glute when the knee comes in. Remember, your sacrum presses down to keep the pelvis from tipping. Good. And then pause, the knee above the hip, external, internal rotation. You see what your foot is doing, but go deeper with your thinking and your awareness. The movement's happening at the hip. Work the muscles there. Engage the abdominals and feel what that does to the hip joint, the muscles there. It really gives them a nice pull. And then back to center. Left hand on your left hip, left thigh rather, and then lift the pelvis. Now you're working your left buttocks. Right hip, internally rotate, back to neutral. Small movement, internal. Neutral, in, back to neutral. One more time. Internal, back to neutral. Lower the pelvis down. Lower onto your right side. Straighten that right arm back so you can rest your head on the bicep. Left hand, right knee. Left knee lines up with hip, and then you're going to start to slide that left knee forward and back. So extension and flexion of the hip. Be mindful, you're not trying to do this whole wave through the body. Keep the lower back stable. Just work the hip. Imagine you're gliding this left knee on the top of a table, so knee stays in line with hip. The left hand on your right knee should help you engage your core, right? So push into your body and feel that activate deep core. And then just hold it in extension. Work the left buttocks to open the front of the hip. Keep hugging your belly back. You'll get more of a pull across the hip. And then bring that knee back in line. Feet together. And then lifting and lowering that left knee, the little clamshell action. Again, hug the belly back towards your spine. Push the bottom leg down. Woo. Keep going. Couple more of these. Come back to neutral. Kick that leg straight out. Turn the toes down. So internally rotated now here. You feel that outer hip and thigh. If it feels appropriate, you can tap the toes, lifting and lowering. Hug belly back. Press the bottom leg down for 3, 2, 1. And then lift that left leg up. Come on to your back. The right hand goes to that right inner knee. You're keeping it down. The left hand supports your outer left leg. And it's just this big opening through the adductors into the groins. Activate your legs by pressing into your feet. Hug the belly back. Couple breaths. And you'll come back around onto your right side, bending this left knee. Plant the foot outside the left knee. The right knee. Left knee points up and come around onto your forearms facing back. So like in a Sphinx pose. And then you can rock a little bit forward and back. Just feeling into this externally rotated left hip. The foot is pushing the floor, so you get energy up from the ground. And then just any undulations with the spine that help you kind of release all the way down that left side. And then to come out of this, right arm threads under. Come on to your back. Stay with the figure 4, ankle to knee. Get that right foot on the ground. Arms by your side. Use your strength to bring that right knee towards you, keeping the lumbar spine light. So the lower back's light, meaning you're not pushing your low back down and then your pelvis tips. You're keeping the low back light. The sacrum is pressing down. And then you can rock from side to side here. Your mind is telling that left knee to move away from you. And then come back to center, right foot down, left foot down. Bring the soles of the feet together, knees wide, hands to the top of the thighs, traction out a little bit here. As you push the thighs away, hug the belly back, maybe a little rocking from side to side. Knees together, knees in towards your chest. And then bring the feet as wide as your mat. Arms out wide, and let's just try these little windshield wipers again. Knees side to side. Just get a sense of maybe a little bit of a shift in the hips. A little bit more space for movement and for energy. Come back to center. Hug the knees in. Come on up to your seat, and then around onto all fours. We'll close this short little practice with internally rotated cat-cow. So internally rotate, right hip and then left hip. Toes are out wide. Shoulders are over the wrists. Pull the belly in, round the back. Here's your cat back. So feel the width across your lower back into your glutes. And then as you pull the heart forward, lift the sitting bones, keep the belly tight. So think about where the thighs connect to the pelvis. Cat-cow a couple times. Making space around the hips as you internally rotate. Maybe one more round. Cat. And then cow. Come back to center. Scoot your shins to the side. Have a seat. Cross the legs. Take just a moment. Find the waves of the breath. To then point your attention to the new waves of energy that now have room to flow around the hips, within the hips, up into the pelvis, the pelvic bowl, now up through the core of the body and all around. Maybe a little bit more ease just sitting and being in your body. Bring your hands to prayer to the heart, bow the chin. Gratitude for this practice that stimulates the flow of living energy within our body. And then that bright energy can radiate out from us to each other. With gratitude, we bow to each other. Thank you for your efforts. All right. Have fun taking care of yourself. Thank you for practicing.